Hey guys, we are going to this week talk about plant and animal cells. Here are a few of plant and animal cells. That's their red blood cells. We're going to talk about different organelles, so there'll be a lot of vocabulary in here that you will have to know. There are some in the PowerPoint, and then there's some that I will add to the work so you can know the ones that I want you to know. It will not be every organelle in the cell, but for 7th grade we are to kind of touch the surface of cell organelles, and then 8th grade will go in more depth. But plant and animal cells, what we'll be looking at in this PowerPoint is what is the difference between the structure and function in plant and animal cell organelles. So plant and animal cells have some organelles that are the same and some that are different. If you want to think of the organelles in the cell, think of them about like our organs, how we have them to function. They have their organelles to function and to live and survive. Now, plant and animal cells are eukaryotic cells, so they're the multicellular type. They're not the prokaryotic cells. And also we'll be looking at what is a cell membrane, a cell wall, a nucleus, cytoplasm, mitochondria, chloroplast, and vacuole. So those are some organelles that we'll be looking at as well. Alright, so plant and animal cells. They're all eukaryotic cells. They have a nucleus in which all organelles are contained in the membrane. The membrane is the outer edge of the cells. The plant cells, we'll talk about a cell wall that protects them and helps them stand up, but on the inside of that cell wall they have a cell membrane as well. These are animal cells, these are plant cells. You can see where the scientists got that it looks like cell rooms, so they called it a cell, especially in your plant cells. They are structured like bricks because of the cell wall. And because they have to stand up on their own, they don't have a skeletal system like we do. We have animal cells that are more kind of circular and flimsy because like our skin cells, you can push in on it. Your organs, your soft tissue and stuff is all squishy, I guess you would say, and something that you could relate to. But so what makes them different, as you can see, is like they're circular. These are more rectangular and like building blocks. And we'll talk about why they look like this in a minute. So organelles are the tiny cellular structures that perform different or specific functions within a cell, similar to the way the body's organs perform different functions. Just like I said earlier, they have different organelles that keep them alive. We have different organs that keep us alive. You know, if it wasn't for our digestive system, our stomach, our intestines, we couldn't digest our food like we do. And even our mouth and our saliva is part of that digestive system. So they have similar organelles that help them survive as well. So an animal cell has these organelles, and there's a couple I'm going to write on here because I want you to know them that they didn't have on here. But for the first one, we're going to look at cell membrane. I'll have to move it over here. Cell membrane is the outer edge of an animal cell. It allows stuff that's good to come in and stuff to come out. It doesn't let any bad things in. Cytoplasm is kind of like the jelly filling that kind of keeps the organelles in place so they're not just floating everywhere out of order. The vacuoles, the nucleus, which holds the DNA, and the mitochondria, which we'll talk about. But another thing that I want you to know is the Golgi apparatus, or the Golgi body. And you might hear it called the apparatus, you might hear it called the Golgi body, but it's the same thing. Whoops. And then we have rough ER, and then we have the smooth ER. And the ER is just short for endoreticulum. So I don't expect you to know that word, but just know rough and smooth ER. The rough has ribosomes on the outside, so that's why it's called the rough. And the smooth does not have the ribosomes. Also, I want you to know ribosomes. They look like the little dots there. Let's see if I can get this to focus real quick. It's kind of blurry. There we go. That's a little better. But these are the main ones I want you to know. And we'll be going over each one of these. Plant cell organelles, you will see a few that are the same. They have a cell membrane as well, but they have a cell membrane inside of the cell wall. The cell wall is the outer edge. The cell membrane is the pinkish red color, the inner edge. And then they have a large vacuole, whereas the animal cell had a smaller one, and we'll talk about why. They have cytoplasm, which is a gel-like substance that holds the organelles. So just like the animal cell. I underline these so I know I went over them. The nucleus that holds the DNA, because all eukaryotic cells have DNA that's in a nucleus. They have the mitochondrion. And something different, like the cell wall, is the chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis actually happens in a plant. And we'll talk about photosynthesis later. But in the chloroplast, it creates the chlorophyll that the plant needs and the photosynthesis that it needs or to survive. Also, in a plant cell, you have the Golgi apparatus again, or the Golgi body. You have the smooth ER. You have the rough ER. And you have ribosomes. So you have all those as well. So you're going to know all of these, and a lot of them carry over to the animal cell except two, except the chloroplast and the cell wall. That is only in plants. So let's look at what the cell wall is. So the cell wall is found in plant cells only. It's rigid, strong, stiff outer layer. It supports the plant, so it allows it to grow tall. It protects the cell. It allows water and oxygen and carbon dioxide to pass into and out of the cell, which is needed for photosynthesis. So without this, the plants would just kind of fall over. It's kind of this. They have the cell wall because it's kind of like their skeletal system. We don't need a cell wall in our cells because we have the skeletal system that holds us up. But plants do not, so they have to have a cell wall in their cells that make them up. The cell membrane is found in both of the plant and animal cells. In the plant, like I said, it's in the inner side of the wall. In animals, it's the outer layer. It supports and protects the cell and controls movement of materials in and out of the cell. So this is the main function of the cell. And when it says it maintains homeostasis, that means it keeps a balance. Like our body maintains homeostasis by getting rid of infections and sweating or cooling our bodies down. When we have a fever, our fever breaks, you sweat kind of a lot, so it's cooling your body back down from fighting that infection. So your body tries to keep that homeostasis state. That means it's state of well-being and natural, what it's supposed to be. So the cell membrane controls the movement of stuff in and out. So as you can see, it has like little doors that open when it's stuff that needs to go in, and it opens on the inside and lets stuff out. So it allows materials that the cell needs to take in, but it keeps the bad stuff out, kind of like our skin. The nucleus, as you can see here, these dots in the animal cell and these dots in the plant cell, and we will actually, hopefully maybe when we come back, get to look at some actual cells that I have. But you can see the nucleus. It's found in both plant and animal cells. It's a large oval shape in the center of the animal cell, and it's usually at one of the edges in the plant cell, but it's in the center of the animal cell, but it's there. It controls your DNA, which is called the hereditary material. So it tells the cell what it's going to be. Oh, you're going to be a kidney cell, or you're going to be a skin cell, or for the plants, you're going to be a leaf cell, or you're going to be a stem cell. So that controls what that cell is going to become. And even, babies, they're made, they come from two single cells, which is your prokaryotics, and when they combine, they start, multiplying in cells. But you get half of the DNA from those cells from your mom, and half of the DNA cells from your dad. And when they combine, they make you. So that's why sometimes you have traits of your mom and your dad that can be seen, or even your behavior. So it's the brain of the cell. So you need to know that it controls the cell activities, okay? And that DNA is found there. And DNA just stands for deoxyribosome nucleic acid, but we shorten it for DNA. I've had students ask that before. So cytoplasm is our next one. Both of them are in the plant animal cells. It's a clear, thick, jelly-like material. It supports and protects the cell organelles. So it's the jelly like in the middle of a donut, but it protects those cell organelles from bumping into each other or causing harm. So we really are glad that we have this cytoplasm. Here's one that a lot of people know as the powerhouse of the cell. That's what the nickname is. But what I want you to know is its actual cause. So I'm glad that you know that the nickname is the powerhouse of the cell, but we really want you to know what it does and to create that power, to be called the powerhouse of the cell. But it's the mitochondrion, and it's found in both animal and plant cells. It's kind of shaped like a bean with inner membranes. But the main role of it is to break down sugar or glucose molecules into energy. So it breaks down the cell's food, which is the sugar or glucose, into energy. That energy is called ATP. It's the chemical energy that comes from that glucose for the cell. But I really want you to know that even though it's called the powerhouse of the cell, what it does is it breaks down that sugar molecule into energy to keep that cell energized to do its daily function. The vacuole is found in all plant cells. They are larger in the plant cells than in the animal cells. They store, and the reason being is because they store large amounts of food and water. So a plant can't get up and just walk and get food and water like we can. So that's why theirs is larger than the animal cells. So when it's found in the animal cells, it stores, food and water for the cell, but it also metabolizes and gets rid of toxic waste that it keeps. So they're like fluid-filled little sacks that hold that water and that food for these cells and also get rid of the waste. A lot of people think of these as kind of like a storage room or a water tank. And then we have our chloroplasts, as you can see over here in the plant cells, and they do look like little green dots or whatever, jelly. They are only found in the plant cells. They're green ovals. They contain the chlorophyll. You need to know that. And they use energy from the sun to make food, which is the sugar and oxygen for the plant. So this is the photosynthesis, and we'll go more in depth with photosynthesis, but it used energy from the sun to make food. That is photosynthesis. What I want to go back to real quick is the cell organelles that I want you to know that are both in plant and animal cells, but that we didn't go over as much, okay? So I'm going to go back to this, and we're going to discuss the parts that were not on this slide. And I was going to make some slides, but I forgot when I printed this out. So we're going to start with the Golgi apparatus. It is responsible for packaging proteins and sending them out. So if you want to take note, you know, packaging protein and sending it out. You could think of this like as a department store or like Amazon, because they package stuff and send stuff out. But that is what the Golgi body apparatus, or Golgi body or Golgi apparatus does. The next one we're going to look at is ribosomes. And ribosomes are the protein of the cell. So it's just proteins that the cell uses for the cell. Now, it does have some roles that they play in RNA and stuff like that, but we're not going to get to that. You just need to know that ribosomes are the proteins. And some people remember that by rib. You know, rib is a protein. Then we have the rough and smooth ER. So the rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum has functions that are similar. The rough has the ribosomes on the outside, so that's why it's called rough. It actually, what it does is it sends out. Let me find my notes here. I have to write these down too because it's been a day. So it actually sends out and modifies the proteins that need to be delivered to the different organelles in the cell. So it's kind of like the delivery truck or the ambulance, if you're thinking ER. So both the smooth and rough ER sends out the protein to the cell organelles. Get that? Okay. Cell organelles. Let me move that over. So they're kind of like, if you want to think of an ambulance or a delivery truck, they're the ones that send what the Golgi apparatus packs up and sends out that protein to all the organelles. Let's see. And that really is all the different ones I wanted you to know. So what we're going to look at is these last few questions. It says, tell the difference in the structure of plant and animal cells. So what are the two different plant and animal cells? Two differences. Okay, so the plant cell has a cell wall and the chloroplast because it has to create and make its own food, and it has to stand up tall. The animal cells do not have to do this on their own because animals hunt for food, they feed themselves, they give them water. We're always replenishing that for the cells to kind of soak up and take. We don't need a cell wall because we have our skeletal system. So So that's the difference in the structure. And the difference in the function of plant and animal cell organelles, they both have the cell membrane, only the cell wall is outside of the plant. They both have a nucleus, they both have cytoplasm, mitochondria, and vacuoles. The plant has the chloroplast, which does what? If you said makes food, uses sunlight to make food for the plant, you are correct. So photosynthesis happens there in the chloroplast. You really need to know the organelles and their functions. That's the main takeaway from this plant and animal cell, and that you know that there's two different organelles in the plant cells than in the animal cells. So that is your main goal, is to figure, to learn these functions of the organelles and to know the two differences, the cell wall and the chloroplast that's in a plant cell. So I hope you have learned a lot from this video, and if you need to rewatch it, that is fine. Rewatch it as many times as you can, or you need to. If you need help, remember to get with me. Hopefully we'll be back in school when you're watching this, and I'll be right there with you, or if we're not, there's always Google Meets that we can talk about the lesson. Have a great day.